The Conservatorium awards 85 full and part-time scholarships a year, a total of around $31,000 in free tuition. Next year, a new award will be added to the list. Keith Buckton of the Hunter Freemasons fraternity today handed over $10,000 to Principal Michael Dudman. The scholarship is for a talented musician or vocalist aged between 12 and 17 who is finding it hard to raise the $1,200 fee. The scholarship will mark the centenary of the United Grand Lodge and will be handed out annually for 10 years.
This moment, more than any other in the quake, sparked the controversy. Firemen who'd been working in the devastated workers' club moments after it fell were ordered out of the building by police, who feared the ruin could collapse, taking more lives. Firemen and paramedics had to walk away from victims still trapped in the rubble until they were allowed back precious minutes later. Intense rivalry between police and fire rescue crews reached a bitter climax at that point, but the matter was put aside in the interests of a common cause. The issue resurfaced in a document leaked to a Sydney radio station this morning. It claimed police had bungled the operation, that the SES had panicked and that the Army had been gung-ho. This afternoon, Police and Emergency Services Minister Ted Pickering said the document referred to had never been an official report.
It's virtually an unofficial document that was created immediately after the earthquake by some fire brigade officers in Newcastle who were debriefing themselves, as it were.
In fact, the report appears to be an incomplete transcript of a meeting of junior fire brigade officers held 2 days after the quake. This is where that controversial debriefing was held. The 50 firefighters who met here knew that it was a standard part of any major operation. They also understood that they were encouraged to give as full an account as possible. As one officer put it, getting it off their chest had a therapeutic side as well. But what they all believed was that the meeting and what they said was in the strictest possible confidence. The most damaging claim was that the police order to leave the club had cost lives. That's denied by paramedic Mal Martin. In your opinion, would that patient have survived?
Look, no. That's the short answer. I treated that patient, that was Mr. Bender. I treated him for over an hour. He received a great deal of whole blood. He received a great deal of intravenous fluids. He was bleeding so severely that he was beyond human aid, quite frankly.
Newcastle Police Superintendent Russ Cook said he'd spoken to senior fire brigade officers. He defended their right to hold private talks critical of any aspect of the operation.
We've got no argument with the fire brigade, nor do I see that the fire brigade here have got any argument with us. People, by way of their debrief, and the same as us, we say all sorts of things. We criticise ourselves, we criticise other people. And it's because we are able to do that that we can smarten up our operations. Now, that sort of a thing ought not be leaked, simply because if you do, your operatives won't talk frankly. So then you don't get the information you require to make your operations better.
Hunter College of TAFE teachers met at Newcastle City Hall this morning to review the progress of their negotiations with the state government over the past 12 months. The verdict among the 300 teachers was that the government's proposed changes to teaching hours would cost more in lost overtime than could be earned by the 3% pay rise. Teachers voted unanimously to support a 48-hour strike. Teachers Federation representative Jerry Watts says the government can still avert the action.
We don't like to cross our bridges before we come to them, and we hope that's avoidable. We hope that the 48-hour strike, or even just the threat of it, and the government does have the opportunity of averting it by giving us wage justice.
The General Electric plant will refurbish generator and turbine equipment used in power stations and other heavy industries. Previously, such facilities have only been available overseas, but now power station equipment in Australia and Asia will be serviced in Maitland.
Well, Maitland is about in the centre of a very important area for power station work, and as we were going to have to move out of the docks at Sydney because they're closing down, this seemed a very suitable place to do it.
The plant will be located on land lease from the Hunter Valley Training Company. As well as employing 30 local tradesmen, it will provide specialised training for apprentices.
Over a period of 3 or 4 years, there will be 100 or 200 apprentices obtaining the highest possible skills in engineering and electrical trades that it's possible to have. That's the big boost to the Hunter.
Work on the plant will begin as soon as the floodwaters disappear, and it's hoped operations will be underway by July.
These earthworks are in fact the beginning of Mount View High the second. The first is next door, a collection of demountables which began in 1985 and has grown until it looks semi-permanent. Terry Metherall is used to noisier receptions than he received when he arrived at the school today. It was deserted. The visit coincided with the swimming carnival. The Minister was in Cessnock for a meeting with the Teachers Federation and to inspect progress on the $13 million Mount View 2, which he says will be unrivalled in the state.
It'll have the best art facilities, it'll have the best multi-purpose centre, it'll have the best industrial arts, it'll simply have the best.
That may be so, but the Teachers Federation says Terry Metherall has little to be proud of.
It's funny that the Minister's up here today to view the earthworks of what should have been the announcement of the opening of Mount View High School.
Philip O'Neill claims that before the last state election, Liberal candidate Bob Roberts promised the school would be completed by April this year. Mr Roberts was elected.
I know teachers personally who were traditional Labor supporters who were so concerned and so upset by the way that this school had been treated by the then Labor government that they changed their vote to vote for Bob Roberts because of that promise, and those people feel very let down.
Dr Metherall, however, made it clear today that past election promises are not on his speaking agenda. Was a 2-year date originally given as an election issue, as an election platform?
The PNC are delighted with the progress. They've been very closely involved.
Although they will have a new school next year, the joy of teachers at Mount View is tempered by the knowledge that they will have spent 6 years in demountables. Today was the school's first full swimming carnival. It now has years 7 to 12. It is also the last swimming carnival for Year 12 students who've spent their whole high school life waiting for a permanent school.
Actually, it's a lot of a disadvantage because we haven't got a senior centre. We got one this year, but it's only a demountable room.
When it rains, it's a real hassle because some of the rooms leak and the walkways just get totally flooded out.
From our first day in Year 7, we didn't even know whether our school would be ready, and it's been the same. None of us have been sure what's happening from one year to the next.
This event was introduced last year in recognition of the enormous contribution of the late Rod Allen to his favourite sport, dirt track bike racing. A record field was attracted to the first meeting, and already more than 120 starters have nominated for Sunday's events, including Chris Watson, Sean Wilmot and many other champions. One interesting starter is 17-year-old Jamie Plum, the grandson of Rod Allen. Jamie is already a state champion on a 125cc bike and has a preference for speedway. For the youngster from Cessnock, it was Grandad Allen who got him interested in the sport.
Yeah, ever since I was little, he take me around to the bikes and that's how I got into the bikes.
Another event that will create plenty of noise on the weekend is the annual Poolbar Island ski race. To start at 10 a.m. from the Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club on Sunday, many of the state's quickest boats will haul their skiers at upwards of 160 kilometres an hour over 2 laps of the course. The fastest boats will cover the distance well within an hour, with the smaller classes along with social skiing class taking much longer. The organisers have gone to extreme lengths to mark the course, especially near the dropover at Swansea, to eliminate confusion for spectators and fishermen alike.
A huge queue stretched for close to a kilometre as fans waited for the gates to open. An army of security men patrolled the scene, weeding out alcohol, bottles and troublemakers. There were some nervous moments as menacing skies threatened, but the rain held off and the show got underway with Spy vs Spy. There was no forgetting just what prompted the historic concert. With a play on words, the Newcastle earthquake was proclaimed everybody's fault. As the crowd warmed up, the party boys took the stage, singing of something we've seen a lot of lately.
There's 40,000 people here, they couldn't care if it was cancelled, they'd all give their money because they're Novocastrians, man, and that's why. Woo! Novocastrians! Woo!
Patrick Murray was one of the lucky ones who beat the odds on December 28. He was pulled from the Workers' Club, there to set up for the Split Ends Crowded House concert that night. Today, the former roadie held court in his wheelchair, catching up with some of the greats of the rock industry.
All these people have come together for one purpose and for one purpose only, and that's to aid everybody who was affected by the earthquake. And that is something, it's really something.
It's great fun, yeah, really good fun. Yeah. Nice to be able to do something,
Heartache in the morning light, I can see you looking back. Tell me now, do you feel alright? Are you lonely on the track?
A change of pace and Ian Moss took the stage, but the music wasn't enough to soothe some of the audience.
So if there's anybody next to you screwing up, tap them on the shoulder and tell them to cool it. We're here to have a good time.
And if that didn't work, security staff had their own way to deal with any overheated fans. But trouble did erupt, with police making half a dozen arrests as sporadic fights broke out. An army of national and international photographers, journalists and camera crews converged on the ISC to report on what's being billed as the biggest Australian rock event of the decade. Record executives were flown in from the United States for a rare opportunity to see so much Australian talent in one venue. The Newcastle Earthquake Relief Concert will be seen and heard around the world. In the media rush, even the interviewers were interviewed.
Leslie, were you here when the earthquake happened?
But as 40,000 fans feast on an exceptional lineup of Australian talent, there was little doubt over who the crowd was waiting for.
We went to see Midnight. Yeah, we can't wait, mate.
Midnight Hall will take the stage just before 7 p.m, capping off a concert that will carve a niche in rock history.
42,000 people. All here for a good cause. It's all rock and roll. Yeah. It's all rock and roll. I say let's check. Say it's all rock and roll.
But you can save your crime.
40,000 people here, they couldn't care if it was cancelled, they'd all give their money, because they're Novocastrians, man.
We're going to be personal now.
If everyone was being paid, the ticket price would have had to be substantially higher.
Now, you've been down in the crowd. What was the...
It's a mixture of feelings, because obviously we still feel pretty deeply for those who lost, loved ones, and but at the same time we do consider ourselves incredibly fortunate that it didn't happen 10 hours later when there would have been 5,000 people in the building, or half an hour later when all of our road crew would have been in there.
You look at here, you've got a smile, all these people have come together for one purpose and for one purpose only, and that's to aid everybody who was affected by the earthquake. And that is something, it's really something. Hello Newcastle, you're beautiful.
It's always good to play up this area, so, and be able to do something as well, constructive. It's fantastic.
Heartache in the morning light, I can see you looking back. Tell me now, do you feel alright, or you on the track? And how many...
So let's calm it all down and have a good time, Newcastle.
I think the heat's got a few of them, and I'd say that it looks like that some may have got some alcohol in through the security guards undetected, and this is what's probably caused the problems.
So long. Look after yourselves. Thank you.
Police say thieves must have worked for several days sometime this year, progressively jacking up the coal hoppers and removing brass bearing blocks from the axles of about 50 cars. The coal hoppers are more than 60 years old. They're on permanent lease from Coal and Allied to the Richmond Vale Railway Society. The Society planned to restore the wagons as rolling stock, but the theft virtually cripples the hoppers. Detective Rob Robertson says police have taken one of the 7-kilo bearings to scrap metal yards, advising operators to be on the lookout. He thinks thieves will have trouble finding a buyer.
I do. Once we've circulated the property as being stolen and the scrap metal merchants are aware that we're interested in anyone trying to sell these, I feel that if they come in the future, they'll notify us, and if they have come in the past, then they should check their books and notify us in turn.
Detective Robertson says the theft is especially unwholesome, as thieves could only hope to make a few $1,000s, while the Railway Society faces a replacement bill of more than $30,000. A spokesman for the Society said volunteer members couldn't hope to raise the money immediately. Even if they replace the bearings on one wagon a year, it will take them 50 years to restore all to working condition.
Most of the action in the truckies dispute is occurring near the Victorian border, but Hunter Valley truck drivers have shown that support for the blockade is statewide. Around 60 coal truck drivers gathered just outside of Lochinvar early this afternoon. It was not their intention to block the New England highway, just to demonstrate the power of the truckies union.
We can't afford to stop for too long, otherwise we'll all be out of a job. But we just want to show our support for the other truck drivers around the state.
The drivers claim they're being unfairly treated by the state government and say all they want is a fair go.
We're in the same situation that they are. Our licences and livelihoods are at stake because of these new road laws that the state government are pushing through, and we just feel that we're being unjustly treated.
The drivers are also angry at the lack of support for the rebel drivers from the Transport Workers Union.
You want to get out and barrack for all these blokes that are sitting on the border. Us blokes running New South Wales country couldn't even pull up. We had to run up and down the highway last week like a flaming scab. I had blokes whinging because all them local blokes, you know, like I mean, all them local blokes, you ring up and you want to go out and you want to support them, what can you do? Nothing.
The drivers will meet later in the week in a further show of strength. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The timing of the act is ironic, coming as it does in the wake of recriminations between the fire brigade and police over the handling of rescue work after the earthquake. The issues at stake, however, are quite different to those involved at the Workers' Club. On scene, the police were in charge then, as they will be now. What has changed is the number of people who will now be allowed to go to emergencies. Locally, the police, ambulance and fire brigade all have rescue equipment, and without coordination, the obvious has often occurred.
There were, on occasions, although not every occasion, an over-response of some rescue units to certain situations, so some sort of sanity had to be put in the system.
Now the only service which may turn out without being authorised by the police is the accredited one. A government team travelled the state, assessing what resources were available in each area. The best equipped service or organisation has been accredited. The rescue services agree change was needed, but there are reservations about how it was done.
The implementation group crept in here unannounced, either to the sub-branch or to local management, spoke to one person, had a quick look and then removed themselves from the scene.
In Newcastle, the police rescue squad has become the accredited body. The Newcastle Ambulance Rescue Unit has been given backup status, but the fire brigade has been left out altogether. If the fire officers now attend a rescue without direction from the police, they will be breaking the law. And that, they say, puts them in a very difficult position.
So if an accident did occur in front of your fire station and fire prevention wasn't needed, what would you do?
I think we'd have to look at the situation and examine it at that time.
The fire officers now fear their rescue equipment will be allocated to other areas. A spokesman for Ted Pickering's office said today the minister knew there would be some animosity towards the act, but that they couldn't legislate for egos.